important work that is done by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. He had a first meeting in Moscow, then yesterday meeting in Kiev, and of course we are very sad that in the middle of his meeting also Kiev was attacked by Russian missiles. This is something that we really regret, because Antonio Guterres is doing the most important work for the world peace and for the United Nations, and his work should be fully respected. Also, the humanitarian situation in Ukraine is extremely difficult. The need for food aid is particularly urgent. Russia's military operations have targeted civilian targets, and civilians, including children, have been killed. The situation is catastrophic, particularly in encircled cities such as Mariupol. There's a need to guarantee the security of civilians and enable humanitarian access. Thank you.
Minister Linde, please.
Jag vill också tacka dig, Pekka, för ett otroligt gott, men inte minst nu när vi har så oerhört viktiga diskussioner så är det viktigt att kunna ha en så nära och förtroendefull relation. And the Foreign Minister and Haavisto and I, we have had a very good meeting, as always. We will discuss the security situation in Europe, including Russia's ongoing aggression against Ukraine and how to continue to support Ukraine. Both Sweden and Finland support Ukraine in all different ways, humanitarian, military, politically, and we are both working hard to get even the sixth sanction package in EU. The 5th of May, there will be a pledging conference in Warsaw shared by Sweden and Poland, and we hope this also will bring more aid to Ukraine. I can also underline what Minister Haavisto is saying about the attack on Kyiv when the Secretary General of the United Nations was there. It was kind of an attack also on international right and the United Nations. But of course, we also informed each other regarding the security policy review process, both in Sweden and Finland. We are in constant touch and agree on the importance to continuously keep in very close contact about the current situation in each country. We were very pleased to welcome the Finnish Foreign Affairs Committee to Stockholm last week. Dialogue between our parliamentarians are very important. And Minister Haavisto took part in our first meeting with the deliberations that is going on under my chairpersonship with all the 8 parliamentary parties. The Swedish-Finnish bilateral relationship is, of course, uniquely broad, and it includes many different areas of cooperation. For instance, trade, economic cooperation, crisis preparedness, civil defense, as well as our extensive people-to-people contacts. And of course, we especially look forward to the state visit by President Niinistö in May, which will contribute to further development and close bilateral cooperation. And we were very happy to receive Prime Minister Sanna Marin when she presented also the report from the government to our Prime Minister. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Linde and Minister Haavisto. And now we move to the interactive part. You can ask your question from the room. Just wait for the microphone. We have first question there in the back. Please introduce yourself and also to whom the question is addressed.
Janne Hopsu, MTV3 News. This is for Foreign Minister Linde. Finland is about ready to apply for membership in NATO. Will Sweden do that same thing and simultaneously with Finland? And if Sweden decides not to apply, what does it implicate for security of Sweden? Thank you.
Well, we have not come to the conclusion yet in Sweden. We have this deliberation with all the political parties in the parliament. We decided a little bit different here. In Finland, the government did the analysis and then went to parliament. We brought in the parliamentary parties already in the beginning and is doing the analysis together. And this analysis will be ready the 13th of May. And until then, we will not have any clear line of where we are ending, what it will be the end result. Of course, Finland is Sweden's closest partner, and our countries are cooperating closely than ever. And it is a cooperation in peace, in conflict, and crisis. And it includes planning and preparation to assert the territorial integrity of each country. And this cooperation is extremely important, whatever decision. But of course, what Finland decides will very much affect what Sweden is going to decide, and we have that into our analysis.
Next question here, please.
Good afternoon, Lauri Nurmi from newspaper Iltalehti. Question to both foreign ministers. What kind of promises for military aid or military support you have got from the member states of NATO? I mean, security guarantees in practice, not legally binding, but in practice. And could you please tell us something concrete, and which countries have promised to support us if we apply NATO membership? Thank you.
Well, if I start, thank you for the question. Of course, we are currently at the stage that we are informing EU member states, NATO member states, also other countries about our process, and telling that this process can end to the situation that Finland and Sweden will apply for the membership. And before you are accepted as a member, there is a process of 30 NATO member states has to ratify the agreement, and this will take time in their parliaments, maybe 4 months, up to 12 months, depending on the rapidness of the parliamentary processes. And of course, that is a period where you have to rely to your own security, to rely your own defense forces and so forth. You are not yet under the NATO Article 5. Of course, NATO as such has an interest that when some country applies for the membership, and NATO has the open door policy, from their side also certain interest to defend that open door policy, that it's not disturbed by some other third factor. At the same time, when we are part of the European Union, of course, many European Union countries nowadays underline the 42.7 article, and this is something, those discussions are anyhow all the time ongoing. We have the strategic concept or compass by European Union, and there are security steps also which are taken under the 42.7 article. So this is more general and on those issues that are country-specific, what kind of support or other countries can give. This is up to those countries then to announce when they think that is the right time. Thank you.
Well, Minister Haavisto told it so eloquently, so I have nothing to add. I support it fully.
Thank you, Ministers. Next is there in the back. You have the floor.
Tuomas Savonen, Finnish News Agency. Many people have been worried about this so-called grey period or grey zone between leaving the application for the NATO membership and becoming an actual member. Are Finland and Sweden planning for some kind of joint measures to counter possible influences by, for example, Russia to Finland and Sweden during this so-called grey period or grey zone? And if these measures are planned, what kind of measures are being planned?
Well, I can say that the answer to that is what Minister Haavisto just said, and that there is no other country that has so strong cooperation between each other outside NATO than Sweden and Finland has. And we have even operation planning. It also goes for crisis and conflict situations. So that is some kind of cooperation that we already have.
Maybe to add to that, fully agree what Minister Linde said, that we already have ongoing cooperation, and of course if our security environments comes more challenging, of course we can add that bilateral planning, and it includes all sectors on military cooperation. The Finnish and Swedish military cooperation and security cooperation is very deep and is ready to respond to many kinds of threats.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, dear ministers. I am Salem Abdelmanem from Al Mayadin, a pan-Arabic media network, and my question is to both ministers. If Riksdag and Eduskunta decide that the two countries will join the NATO, what is the next step? I mean, do we expect arrival of NATO troops and militaries and weapons to your country's infrastructure? And what reaction do you expect from Russia if this happens? Thank you very much.
Well, if there is a decision, then we have to take those questions later about permanent bases and nuclear weapons and so on. I don't see that we should have any other position than, for example, Norway and Denmark and Iceland and Germany. When it comes to what we expect from Russia, we have noticed that there is two narratives. One is, of course, warnings that has been from the Foreign Affairs Ministry that there will be consequences if we are applying for membership. On the other hand, we have also seen the kind of downplaying of the importance of whether NATO has 32 or 30 members. But we are monitoring this very closely, and we are prepared to counter any possible Russian activities.
Maybe to answer from the Finnish perspective, first fully agree what Minister Linde said, and from the Finnish perspective we understand that even when you are part of the NATO defense alliance, your own responsibility always is to defend your own country. Finland has quite strong military forces. We have a conscription army. We have a reserve of 280,000 soldiers to be used in a crisis situation, and we have been investing also to the new military equipment. So at the first hand, we are defending our own country. Secondly, when you are a NATO member, of course, there is also common defense planning in the case that you need some help or some support. But I would say that we are a net contributor of the security also if we are a NATO member.
We still have a couple of minutes. There was a question from the gentleman in the back. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Petri Burts of Finnish Broadcasting Company Yle. So, question first to Minister Linde. Do you expect there to be difficulties in ratifying Finland's and Sweden's NATO application in terms of NATO member countries, possibly extracting political favors? We saw this week, for example, the Croatian president setting conditions on Finland's membership. And then a question to Minister Haavisto. You already condemned the Russian strike in Kiev yesterday, close to Secretary General Guterres' hotel. How do you think the international community should respond to this? Thank you.
Well, thank you. Of course, every time when there is a ratification process in national parliament, anything could happen. Ask me, who have been a trade minister. It's always come up issues that has no connection at all with the process. Like, for example, what happened last week with the Croatian president who put two issues together that has no connection at all. And we have to be prepared with that. But having said that, in all the talks we have had and also what the NATO Secretary General has had, I and Minister Haavisto has met him now several times for discussions. The overall impression is that if Sweden and Finland apply, there will be it will be positively received by the NATO members, not the least because Sweden and Finland would then be net contributor of security.
Thank you for the other question regarding the strike against Kiev close to the Secretary General's location and hotel. I think there should be two reactions. One, first reaction to admiration of the work that Secretary General is doing in the most difficult conditions. He's traveling both to Moscow and to Kiev to try to find peaceful solutions and particularly try to find a safe passage for people who are locked now in Mariupol under an extremely difficult situation. And the second reaction, of course, should be discussions in the Security Council, where Russia is a permanent member of the Security Council, to guarantee the safety of the UN people, and particularly the Secretary General and his staff in all circumstances, that at least the Security Council member and member states should not pose a threat against the work that Secretary General is doing.
We still have time for one last question. Yes, please.
Tuomas Savonen, Finnish News Agency. Between Finland and Sweden there is a demilitarized group of islands called Åland. How worried are you about Åland Islands at this time of European history, since it's demilitarized and Russian troops could, for example, paratroopers, could reach it in just a few hours? So how worried are you about the situation in Åland at the moment?
Well, of course, when we look at the security situation around the Baltic Sea, we have to look all those areas that could be under hostile military influence. Finland is responsible for protecting Åland Islands. We are responsible for protecting the demilitarization of the islands. We are responsible to protect the neutrality of the islands during the possible time of conflict and war. And we have our plans for that protection. I think if Finland would apply NATO membership, it doesn't mean any change on the status of the Åland Islands or any challenge to international agreements. There are demilitarized areas also currently in the NATO, so this debate is not acute at this moment.
Nothing to add.
Thank you very much, Minister Linde and Minister Haavisto. Our time slot has come to an end, and thank you all journalists for your interest and questions. The press conference is closed. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.